years, I have been wanting to add brick to my front porch. It is painted, and every year the paint kind of chips off a bunch just after like the winter wear, and I paint it every year, and I'm just kind of sick of it. And I know brick will add like that old house, like charming feel. I just got back from Charleston. A lot of those houses have the brick, so I'm like, this is what I want. We're finally making it happen this week, and I'm so excited to show you the process. The problem with the paint on the porch is that it breaks the bond between the brick and the cement, so that needs to come off first. My husband is using a grinder to remove the paint. This is a terrible job, bless his heart. So make sure if you do this to wear a mask and goggles, because it's just super gross, and you need to vacuum up the dust as you go so you can kind of see what you're looking at. But this will take a while, a few hours at minimum. So if you have paint on your porch, this is going to be your first step, so that brick will stay for a very long time, because if you're going to do all the work and it's an expensive project, you got to prep correctly. Now that the porch is all grinded, which took about 6 hours of my husband grinding, it was so much hard work. Now that that's done, we're going to do the layout. And this might sound silly, but it's a really important step. So what I did was I put out all of the corner bricks, and I use the spacers. Brick is usually a 3/8 space, so I just got this from the Home Depot, and I used spacers so we could see where we needed to do cuts along the front and just like how that laid out. And we just kind of started at one side with a full brick, and then on the other side just one brick will have to be trimmed, so that's fine. And in the middle, because I have columns, those will have to be trimmed out. And then we started on the layout for the body of the bricks that will be behind the front corner. And for that, we're using these brick web sheets, and they're really big. And it's nice because when we finally get to laying, it'll go really fast. So we're putting those out, and we're trying 2 different layouts. The one I really wanted was they lay perpendicular to the front corner pieces. And then the one my husband wanted to try out is they lay parallel. So what we ended up coming to an agreement on, but kind of halfway between him and mine, was doing it perpendicular with the front ones, and then at the back we'll do more individual pieces, just soldier style. That's where they put up, they're next to each other, and then those can easily be trimmed. So that felt like a really happy medium choice, and we wouldn't have known that like how those looked without doing the layout. Okay, so now that we know our layout, we pulled off the big brick web sheets from the back, and we actually pulled off everything but then we ended up putting the front pieces back, so I wish we wouldn't have pulled those off, because the weather is a little bit crappy, so it's too cold to use the tile adhesive. It needs to be 40 degrees or warmer for like the whole like laying and curing time, so for at least 24 hours. So while we were waiting for it to warm up, we started cutting the pieces for the front. So we would just cut a piece and then put it back in with the spacer and then work our way down. And that worked really nice because we didn't have to keep track of, okay, so this is for this corner, this is by this column. They were just in place. And then you can also, because you're cutting them and putting them out, you can also make sure you like the color combination, because there's like a small variety. To cut the corner tiles, all we're using is the angle grinder. That's what we used to clean off the paint off the porch. And you could also use a tile saw. So we're not going to use our tile saw because our hose and all of our outdoor water stuff has been winterized. Instead, we are using the angle grinder, and it works great. You can also use the tile saw if your weather is better than ours. You just need to make sure your brick is totally dry before laying it. So now it is time to actually lay the brick. So our front corner pieces are still in place, and what we're going to do is mix the mortar. So you're just going to put mortar and water in a bucket, and then we like using a mixer attachment for our drill, and you mix it until they're thoroughly combined. And you want the end result to look like frosting and to be able to kind of stand up on its own. So just if it's too thick, add water. If it's too watery, add mortar until you get a really nice combination. So once the mortar is all mixed, it's time to start laying the tile, and we're going to start with the corner pieces. They're already in. So what I'm doing is I'm just going piece by piece, and I am back buttering the corner piece and putting it in place. And then I'm using the spacers to make sure we have the right spacing between each one, and that kind of keeps them straight as well. And then every few bricks, I am taking a level and pushing the corner bricks towards the level so that they're all straight on the front of the step. And so that's gonna like keep a really nice visual, because if they kind of go jagged in and out, it's not gonna look good. And this is a really easy way to just make sure they're all lined up nicely. So I started by myself doing this while my husband was doing some cuts. That worked great. And then he also helped me, so he would back butter the tile and then I would put it in, and that went much faster. So there's a few options for how to do it. Then we moved on to tiling the body of the porch, and for that we first laid a chalk line so we could kind of see, okay, this sheet will go to here, this sheet will go to here, and that will kind of help us stay lined up as we go across the porch. Next, it's time to lay down the tile adhesive onto the porch floor, and to do that you're going to use like a scoop to get the mortar out, and then you're going to do a trowel, and I think we're using a 3/8 inch trowel. And so you need to scoop it on and then get it nice and flat. And once it's flat, you're going to take your trowel and put the grooves in it. And those grooves are what causes the brick to kind of adhere really thickly, really well. So you definitely want the grooves in there. And then you're going to start putting the sheets down, and you need to make sure you work the correct way. So you want the outside bricks to your left, the ones that kind of jut out a little, and then that way you can keep layering on top of the mesh. Because I've heard some people, they were like, oh, they did it the opposite way, so then they'd have to raise the last piece to get the mesh under the brick. So just make sure you're laying it the proper way so that it's easy to do. And then if any of the bricks come loose off the brick web, all you're gonna need to do is back butter them and put them into place, and that'll keep them from moving around. I also found that if there was like a low spot in the porch, if I added more tile adhesive underneath it, it kind of kept it the same level as everything else, and that looks better, and it should help it down the line from being wobbly. So the brick sheets are really fast to put in because you kind of put them in next to each other. It goes pretty quick. The things when you have to do cuts around them, that takes a little bit more time. So like right by our door, we had some pieces we had to cut in half. And then along the back part of the porch, we had to cut the pieces that are going soldier style against the wall. You want to think about how you're going to lay the brick on your porch so that you're not like working yourself into a corner, because you don't want to step on the brick until it's cured for 24 hours. So kind of make it so that you work down or around, just so that you're not working into a corner so you're stuck. So by the end of our first day of laying brick, we got about half of it done. I would say we started at noon and we ended about 6. So about 6 hours of bricklaying. And that got about halfway done. And so for our second day, we're going to do the other half. But overnight, the thing we need to plan on is it's cold here, and it needs to stay above 40 on the cement for the bricks to cure correctly. So what we're doing is we're laying canvas drop cloths or towels over the brick, and that'll make it so that they can still breathe and release any gases, because you do have a chemical reaction happening with the thin set. And then on the walls of our porch, we hung some tarps, and that's keeping it nice and warm. We kept checking the temperature, and it was always like 45, 47, so we're feeling good about that. For the second day of bricklaying, it was similar to the first day. We just got a really good group. So I would trowel on the thin set, and then I would lay the big sheets of brick. And you kind of want to be careful when you're putting these down, because if like sometimes the brick will come off, and if you break it, it's not as usable. If like it comes loose, that's normal. And then you just use extra thin set to kind of set it into place. And always make sure you have a water bucket handy so that you can use a sponge to clean off any extra mortar that gets anywhere. And then while I was doing the big sheets, my husband was doing the small little pieces in the back, or the pieces around the column that needed to be cut and then laid one by one. So those took more time, but I was able to do the bigger part while he did the more detailed work. At the end, we ran out of the mortar that we got from the manufacturer, and so we had to go to the store to buy stuff, and the stuff we bought just wouldn't set up. It was so frustrating. We couldn't get it to mix correctly, and we tried that for 2 hours. Then finally we went and bought a different kind, and that mixed right away. So I will link what we use that I recommend from the manufacturer and the backup stuff we use, because those are both great. Because it took so long to finish that, probably the second day we were laying brick for like 8 or 9 hours. And at the end, one thing that took longer besides that problem was that because we were in such a small space working our way off the porch, only one of us could work at a time. So that like kind of made it so it had to be a little slower, and we laid the last brick at like 8 p.m. and I was so glad to be done with that step. After the brick was all laid, we waited 24 hours and then it was time to grout. We thought this would take 2 to 4 hours. Grouting took 8 hours. So it's just kind of a slow process, and because the holes between the brick are so big, it takes a lot of grout, and we needed 4 boxes of grout. To grout, we mixed the grout in a bucket, really similar to how we did the thin set or the mortar, and then we put it into a piping bag. And that way we can pipe the grout right between the lines and it doesn't get as much on the top of the brick. And one thing I should note is if you don't want the brick to change colors, you should use a sealer on the top. If not, the grout, if you get any grout on the top of the brick, it's not going to come off clean like it will on a tile with like a smooth top. It's going to absorb some of it. So that did change the color on mine. It lightened it a little bit and I'm actually really happy with the color change, but it's just a note of and something that you should anticipate. Grouting, what was tricky with it was your hand gets really tired pushing the grout out of the mixing bag, and you need to make sure to clean the mixing bag just with your bucket of water between the times you use it, or else the tip can get like hard and crusty and then it's even harder to get stuff out of it. So the way we did it, one person would push the grout out of the bag and the second person would go with, it's called a brick joiner, and it's a way that you smooth the grout into the lines, and with brick the grout kind of dips down a little bit, so this works for that. And then if we had extra grout, I would just use my hands to kind of push it in, and then I got a wet sponge to clean off the excess grout. Make sure to change the water in your bucket frequently so that you don't have a big buildup of grout, so you can get it as clean as possible. After our day of grouting, all we had to do was take some silicone and put it on the outside of the porch, and now it's done and I have my dream porch. So this is an old house, it's from 1905, and I always felt like it kind of wanted a brick porch. Like now it's fancier than it ever was before, and you know, this is really something I did to make it look nice. I was sick of the upkeep of painting it every year, and now it looks so much better, and I think this is really a permanent solution for my porch because I think it looks so pretty. It gives it so much character, and it kind of feels like it was always meant to be this way and it was always here maybe. And so I love the look of it. Maintenance wise, I'm not gonna have to paint every year. It hides the dirt better, and I just love the look. So for me, this was totally worth it, even though it was a challenging project. It definitely was, but I love it. Let me know what you think of the project, if you would try this in your house. If you liked watching me brick my porch, make sure to give this video a thumbs up, and if you aren't already, make sure to subscribe.